Daniel Kickert, welcome to Gibbo Goes One-on-One. I know you've been begging me for a long time ever since I started this. Probably what's it been 4 weeks now, and I was like, you know what, I can't handle you keep hounding me. So I was like, I got to get you on. How you doing?
Constant messages, I was getting my daughter to write, postcards and send them to you in the mail, begging for you to let me on this amazing broadcast.
We'll get to how good it is later on in the show. But what have you been doing, man? Obviously, everyone's in isolation. You're in Sydney right now. What have you been doing?
Just killing time. Two little ones in the house, so we're just trying to keep them as occupied as much as we can, with the parks being closed and not being able to visit family and things like that. We've just been we're actually lucky where we live. There's a lot of like bush paths and some tracks and waterfalls and stuff. So we've just been going on little hikes and trying to get out of the house. The weather's been good up here, and just trying to be outdoors to get some exercise and get the kids kind of outside of the house so they're not going crazy.
I've asked all my guests this, obviously still part of a team or whatever. Are you, have you been given programs to try and do to keep, obviously it's off season, so you probably, I don't know if you're planning to go and play anywhere right now, but any kind of program?
Yeah, we've got our at-home program.
Or to keep saying?
Yeah, we've got our at-home programs given to us by our strength coach, Toby Banfield. So all the guys are still in the group chat, talking to each other, talking about what they're up to. And fortunately, a lot of guys we had access to all of our team equipment. So guys were able to divvy some of that up and take it home. TheraBands and bands and, different things that we need, weight vests and kettlebells and all that kind of stuff. So guys have stocked up pretty well at home, and just running through the program, just trying to stay on top of it, go for a run here and there, bike ride here and there. But it's tough. Obviously nothing replicates playing. And so it's going to be a long off season, obviously. This guy's going to have to stay active as possible, because, that period where you're coming back is always the riskiest, worried about injuries and things like that. So I think everyone's doing a pretty good job over here of staying on top of that load management stuff.
You're obviously like older and towards the back end of your career. Were you planning on playing this off season, or were you going to go overseas and try and pick up a few months somewhere, or are you just going to?
Yeah, no, I was planning on just staying around Sydney. And my focus is just, extending my career for as long as I can, and didn't want to take the risk of playing overseas and, potentially jeopardize, the last few years of my career. So I wanted to do the right thing by my body and kind of just have some downtime too with the fam. And the plan was to get away. We were going to go to the States for a bit of a holiday, see my wife's family, things like that, get back to St. Mary's. Unfortunately can't do that. So just making do with what we can now.
Obviously there's a fair bit going on with the NBL and the pay cuts and all that kind of stuff. How have you kind of found all that and dealing with all that? Obviously it's kind of unprecedented type stuff, but you're a smarter, older head that researches a lot and knows a lot about kind of the situations and what's going on. Like obviously some younger guys probably don't quite grasp what could potentially happen. So just interested from your point of view, being an older guy that, is all up to date with the news and what's kind of going on.
Yeah, it's strange how much it fluctuates. Obviously it's unprecedented time for guys in the league and for everyone around the world. Obviously sport's been hit pretty hard. There's nothing we can do. There's no secondary income that we can get. We can't go coaching. We can't be working guys out, things like that. So there is a lot of stress around the league. When all this came up, I was pretty pessimistic about the ability for the league to go ahead. It looked really bad, and fortunately, I think that's started to change. I think Australia's done a really good job. So is New Zealand. So we're in a really good position, I think, where we're able eventually down the line, I don't know when that will be, to open up the borders between New South Wales and Australia. I know that even in the news today, Tasmania are talking about having the Tasman flights, I guess, going back and forth between New Zealand and that. So that's obviously those discussions already happen, and it's looking better and better every day. I hope it continues that way. Obviously, everyone's nervous about once they start pulling back the restrictions that it's just going to go gangbusters again, and everyone's going to be out at the beaches and out hanging out together, and having that second wave come through is pretty scary. But yeah, my my take on it all was whatever needed to be done just to get the season underway. And it's a difficult situation. Guys are at different points in their careers. I'm going into a free agency period, and it's going to affect everyone. But I guess my standpoint was, let's just get whatever needs to be done. Because for me, I just want to get the season back underway again and have something to start working towards. And I didn't want to sit in the what ifs area for too long. And so that's kind of where my headspace was, is let's get to an agreement as quick as possible. And then just, hopefully down the line, everything turns out pretty well and we can reassess and whatnot, but let's just focus on getting this season going ahead.
Yeah, we'll get to your contracts and all that stuff, Sydney, a little bit later. You mentioned before around your house, you got parks and stuff. You guys, actually, we'll get to your family first. How has it been a dad? Obviously, you got Riley and now Emerson. How has it been a father? Obviously, basketball is one thing, but to come home and hang out with your kids must be pretty cool.
Yeah, there's nothing better. To be honest, I love being able to come home, spend time with the kids, and it's great. They're at the age now where they're not. My oldest Riley isn't at school yet, so we've had her at home, and we're taking as much on as we can in her education. And my Mrs. Erica has been amazing. She's in the midst of teaching her Spanish at the moment, so she's trying to grasp that. And it's been really fun being able to do all those things with her, spend so much time with her. We're fortunate enough, as we are as basketball players, to be able to get a lot of time anyway. But having that extra time in the morning together where I'd normally be at training or something like that has been really nice. And it's full on. Like it's not being able to take kids to the park. There's a lot of, time playing games, trying to invent a new game, come up with something, it can get pretty boring for a kid. Their imagination is so huge. So we're constantly trying to rack our brain of what to do next with her. And we're constantly looking online for ideas, arts and crafts. My missus has been awesome with that. So we've been doing a lot of painting. I've built that many things out of cardboard boxes that are woeful, but she loves them, and we just keep trying to entertain her with those kind of things. The youngest, Emerson, is still pretty young, so she's happy to sit there and watch us all kind of muck around. And I guess with board games with the kids have been popular. We're playing, do you remember Go Fish? I think it was called. When we were growing up,
Go Fish,
a magnet and a little string. Now these days they're cheaply made. It's all plastic, and you just kind of shove it in its mouth and whip it out. So we've been playing a bit of Go Fish.
You mentioned your wife Erica, as everyone knows her as E. I'll every podcast I put up online, like, let's ask some questions to my guests, and she's given me a lot to work with, so we'll get through those over the session. But how did you meet E? How did you score her, and how have you kept her for this long?
Great question. I met her in college. She was stalking me all over campus, couldn't get away from her, and eventually I just caved, and we started hanging out, and we started off as really good friends. She was in our little friendship circle, and met there. And I think after about a year or so, I think we started dating and hanging out, going to the flicks, doing all that kind of stuff, what we did back in college with no money. And then, so she moved over to Europe when I was playing over there. She was, luckily enough, she was studying abroad in Italy, and I got my first rookie contract was in Italy. And so we're about 45 minutes an hour apart. She was based in Florence, and I was about 45 minutes away in a city called Livorno. And that worked out great because we didn't know, what direction our lives would take us. And so we got that year to kind of travel Italy a little bit of Europe together. And she loved it. She is an English teacher, English tutor, does a lot of stuff. She worked a lot in Spain when we were over there, in corporations, teaching English as a foreign language to a few companies and that here and there in Spain. So it worked out really well for us that we moved from Italy to Spain, and we just kind of continued on that kind of journey together through Europe. And we both loved the lifestyle and ended up proposing to her back at St. Mary's in the summer. And traveled all through Europe together, and then moved back to Oz a few years ago, and that's it.
You guys, real old school, like you guys love being outdoors, hiking, mountain trails. all that stuff. And also talk a little bit about, I know you put me onto like a no sugar diet there for a little stretch, but also the no, the healthy or the natural toothpaste and the natural soaps and all that stuff, the no chemical, I guess,
Yeah.
products. Talk a little bit through that kind of stuff that you guys have obviously done with your family and whatnot.
Yeah. So when we were having our first, I guess all that kind of stuff started to come to the forefront about, what are we using in the house and what kind of chemicals have we got going on? And that led to what are we putting in our bodies? Obviously, Erica was concerned about what she's consuming. And you start to see all this data, and we started to make those changes, just small things here and there. So there was this health store right next to our house in Brisbane. So we used to go there all the time just because it was so convenient. And, we started seeing all the different products here and there and just delved deeper and deeper into it. And I guess, we try and limit those things in our life. So, we've got a house full of air filters. We've bought a whole bunch of air filters, which came in handy for when the bushfires were here. We try and put, as many natural products on ourselves when we're washing or brushing our teeth or using deodorant. Most of it, all of it now in the house is pretty natural. Cleaning stuff is all natural stuff, which I'm a big believer in. So is my wife. And it's just to us is common sense stuff. So I'm trying to think what are areas we delve into. But it's mostly just what we're putting on our skin and what we're breathing. We try not to, we try to clean the air as much as we can. It's all
stuff, toothpaste and deodorants and soap that you body wash and are there like cleaning products and stuff like that as well that you.
Yeah, there's all the low tox cleaning stuff that we use. We try and use vinegar and that kind of stuff as much as we can. But no bleaches and things like that. Like we're just basically trying to keep all that stuff out of the house. Seems to be pretty good evidence about how that stuff can affect you and mess with your endocrine system and all that kind of stuff. So having the kids is what spurred it on, and being pregnant, we really tried to stay away from those things. Just we didn't want to take any risks, and no harm, no foul. I always say if we do all these things and it makes no difference, then there's no harm done. But if it makes a little bit of a difference, just a fraction of a difference, then awesome. But at the end of the day, it doesn't harm us. Trying to make these changes, they're pretty easy changes to make. And like I said, if it does nothing, it hurts no one. So, but if it does something, we'll be pretty stoked with that. And often down the line, I'm sure, there'll be evidence to come out that's guaranteed to say it either does or doesn't. But that's the camp we sit in.
I often see Ease, post on Instagram with her food and Riley's little meal plates, and she's got like a little fruits and veggies and sticks and whatever. So obviously, as parents, you influence your kids that way, but obviously you don't know if they're going to be sports people, if they're going to even like playing sport. But is that something that once they get a little bit older, you would love to see them play a sport and professional sport, or you just kind of let them feel their way through it as they get older?
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both. I'd love to see them in sport. I'd love to see them in basketball or something like that, netball, just so that I can share that with them and sharing that experience, and obviously having a bit of experience there, being able to help them through those decisions and that pathway. But at the same time, it's not something we're rushing into. Like we're not shoving a ball in her hand and things like that. We're kind of just letting her grow up. And, there's a lot of evidence to say that, a generalized upbringing in a variety of different things turns out to be more beneficial than specializing at an early age. So we're not trying to just narrow her focus to basketball or anything like that. We want her to try as many things as she wants to try. And if basketball is what she chooses, then that's awesome. But we want them to have a bigger array of skills than just to be narrowly focused. So education is going to be a big one. We want it to be into music, language we're working on now. And just let her be able to make her own decisions. And same with Emerson. But kind of just let them develop at their own pace and see what happens, see what their likes and dislikes are.
Riley loved being at obviously Kings games now. She loved being around the games and coming on the court and all that stuff after games.
Yeah, she's obsessed. She's absolutely obsessed with the Kings and our mascot, the Lion King, and the Cubs and that they have there. So she's absolutely besotted. She's got a little lion that she sleeps with, and it's all decked out in Kings gear and all that kind of stuff. So she loves getting around it, getting back behind to locker rooms, high-fiving mascots and all the players and stuff like that. So she's pretty obsessed. She's got her own little chants and cheers that she likes to throw around. And she's at that age now where she understands that that's what I do. And even now, you know, she's confused as to why we aren't going to games and all that kind of stuff. So it's awesome. I can't wait. My goal is to keep playing as long as I can so that Emerson gets to experience the same thing. So we'll see how that goes.
You've obviously been probably taught your whole life. AFL, did you regret, or if you could go back to before you started becoming a professional basketballer, do you think AFL might have been a better path to kind of go down?
No, not for me. No, I loved playing footy. Footy was the first sport I started with because all my mates played footy. I didn't get into basketball until a little bit later. But I'm too accustomed now to being an indoor sport. I don't think I could be running around in winter. Too cold for me. But no, I've really enjoyed the pathway, the experience that basketball gives you. I got to travel the world, got to go to the States, obviously for college, and then off to Europe. And footy can't give you those experiences, I don't think. And so for me, there's no regrets whatsoever. And to be honest, I think my skill sets and all that fit basketball a lot better than they would footy.
Stand on the 3-point line and just digging threes.
Yeah.
So you obviously went to AAS like a lot of us did, a lot of Australian basketballers did. And then you chose college. Do you wish you had have gone pro instead of going to college? And how does it feel to be obviously one of the, I think Adam Capon and yourself were a couple of the first Aussies to go to St. Mary's, and now there's been like a plethora of like Aussies going through there. I swear every 2 or 3 years at the Bullets Swill together, it's like, shit, you play for St. Mary's and you played as like St. Mary's versus the rest of the guys at practice. How does that feel to kind of know that not you started it, but you're kind of one of the first ones to go through that pathway to St. Mary's? Yeah,
I think to answer the first part about going to college or staying in the NBL it's one of those things. I'm looking back on it. Part of me always thinks, oh, what if I had just played in the NBL my whole career? You know, that would have been great. That would have obviously, it could have been a pathway to Europe as well. But the experiences I had in college, I think that they're so unique that's something that I would struggle with looking back on it, giving up. That ability to go over there to obviously study, but to live away from home for the first time at a young age, away from your country, that far away from your family for the first time was a really good experience for me. Obviously met my wife, and to have that affiliation, I guess, with the school is huge as well. So for me, that's something I wouldn't change. And yeah, like you said, the pipeline of Aussies and even imports and people who have come through that St. Mary's network and who have made their way to Australia is huge. And it's awesome to be a part of. And to say I was one of the first guys, I think that's really cool too. But just to see the success and to know that it's a name, St. Mary's, you mentioned that in the basketball community in Australia, everyone knows what you're talking about. A lot of people have been there, and a lot of people know who has gone through the program. So I remember when I was playing there, I could have walked around in my St. Mary's gear, told everyone I went to St. Mary's, and no one would have had a clue. Even in America, I remember we would travel, and he would stop us in Oakland Airport and ask us if we were a high school team. Like we weren't on the map. Probably until my junior year, we started to make some noise. But seeing where it's at now, it's just at a whole new level. And it's awesome. It's a huge point of pride for all the guys who play in the NBL and all the Aussies who have gone through it.
I'm sure a lot of colleges do this, but been around a lot of players that have been to St. Mary's and go back every year. I think it's every year they have the game where they invite all past players to come back and play whatever the game is, a celebrity game. How good have you been back to do that? And how good is that they do that and keep that tradition going for all past players? Yeah, so they've done it twice, I think. They were trying to do it every second year. And I went to the first one, the inaugural one that they did. I can't remember now, 2014 maybe. And it was awesome. Like to have all those guys come back and play, guys I played with when I was there from, 15 years ago. Plus, 19 years ago, I think I was a freshman there. And to have all those guys around, guys I hadn't seen for a decade, was awesome. And they did it really well. They made sure everyone was integrated well. Everyone got a run. They did they kind of chopped it up. They did a alumni game for the older guys who weren't pros and who were a little bit older than the rest of us. And they got to have a game that people watched. And then
the younger generation guys who were still pros and former pros had a scrimmage, and got to play with, you know, a guy who I played with in college who just torched guys back in the day, and he had a huge game, and our squad ended up winning 3-point competition, all that kind of stuff. And then it's just a big function after, a big barbecue, and they did it really well, and they've done it a couple of times, and the plan is to do it again down the line, obviously when all this stuff's over. But yeah, they just keep getting that many guys through now. It would be hard to make 2 teams. There'd be that many guys who are playing professional overseas. You'd almost need 3 teams.
Do you guys as a family, obviously East from over that way, do you ever consider going back and potentially once you're done playing maybe in Australia to go and live back there, or are you guys pretty happy basing in Australia?
Yeah, no, we're happy here. We want to raise our family here in Australia. But obviously that's always on the cards. That option is always there, and something that we've always had in the back of our mind, something that we wanted to do. I've always said to my wife, E, that I'd love to be able to take our family back there and have her live in her country with our family. And I think that's something I owe to her after all of her dedication and traveling around the world. And that's something we hope to do. We hope that situation arises, but you know, there's always a lot of things to take into consideration, kids at school and all those kind of things. So that's something that we hope happens, and it's just a matter of waiting for the right situation.
You've obviously played in a lot of different places around the world. You said Italy, Spain, Poland, I think is another one. Do you have a favourite place? Obviously Australia. We'll take Australia out for now, but overseas, have you had a favourite place that you've, you know, like to play and live and do all that?
Yeah, Spain for me. Italy was awesome, but I was, I think, a bit too young, a bit too naive to fully appreciate it as much as I could have. But so Spain, it was the sweet spot for me at the stage of my life, stage of my career, stage of my relationship, and just being there where we were. I think we were in Spain a lot for about 4 years. And probably my favourite place there was probably Tenerife. It's a little island in the Canary Islands next to Gran Canaria. I was in Gran Canaria for 2 years. Beautiful place, loved it. I think we enjoyed Tenerife most, again, just at the stage we were there and just what the island had to offer. It's just a beautiful place. You're right on Europe's doorstep. You know, a few hours flight and you're anywhere through Europe, and to be able to have that. And I mean, plus the Spanish food to us is probably our favourite. So, yeah, we look back on that with the fondest of memories, and hope to get back to all the places I played one day down the line, probably when I'm retired and can travel around the world freely. We'd love to hit back all those places that we lived in.
You play in Ukraine?
Yeah.
Now tell me about the escape from Ukraine.
Yeah. It's funny. My father-in-law just sent me a Wall Street Journal article on the city where I live, Mariupol, and it's like the front lines now of the war between the separatists, I guess, and the I can't remember the term, but the more Ukrainian national type. And the city's basically shut down during the war when Russia was coming in, or the Russian separatists or whatever they call them were coming in. It just flattened a lot of areas. And the local airport that I flew out of, I think a week after I left, was flattened by a bomb. And that's now the hub of the separatist movement. So it's pretty crazy. So I was actually just reading up on that today. And while we were there, it was pretty hairy. Like the whole shooting people in the street type thing started happening over in Kiev, and it made its way our way. Our way was kind of calm to begin with because we were considered more pro-Russian than they were pro-Ukrainian. So nothing really kicked off because it was more the pro-Ukrainian side starting their protests and demonstrations in Kiev. And eventually it made its way. I remember getting a phone call from our team manager saying or reading a report actually online that the Russian military was kind of amassing on the Russian-Ukrainian border, which is probably an hour from our city. And the next day the club called us in and basically said, look guys, like you might want to get out of here. We had Serbian coaches and they were advising them to just get in their car with their passports and drive into Russia, like just get out that way. And so they did. They crossed the border, got through safely. And the next morning, I think it was 5 or 6 a.m., a caravan of 3 cars just took me and the other imports straight to the airport through like roadblocks and chicanes and those kind of things. And we got there, and I was there probably 6 hours before my flight, and 2 of my teammates got through pretty quick. And that was the most nervous 5-6 hours that I've ever, just sitting there waiting, still holding my bags because I couldn't check in yet, just waiting for something to go down and people to show up at the airport with guns. And I was just freaking out. And once that plane took off, I was just ecstatic, knowing that I was going to land in Moscow, but everything would be fine. Then from there, I'd get back to Australia. Yeah, that was intense, man.
And then I don't care. Let's forget about the details of on court or whatever. But the aftermath of the Philippines incident, obviously talking to a few of the boys, there was some pretty hairy, scary kind of stuff in the change room and trying to get on the bus and changing hotels and all that kind of stuff. How was dealing with all that?
Yeah, the aftermath was pretty insane. Yeah, just obviously having to shift hotels and do all that kind of stuff and deal with the logistics of all that, and then the impact it had on, just getting out of there and getting back to Australia, and all the media firestorm that came with it was pretty wild. But I think everyone handled it really well. Credit to how we were assisted by everyone involved, Players Association, Basketball Australia. Everyone did well. All the individual clubs, the Kings here were great. As I got back, we moved down to Sydney, and the support structure that Sydney had in place was awesome. And everyone within the community has been great too. I run into a lot of people in the streets and, get a pat on the back and at Sydney games, and people saying, good on you, and we support you guys through all this. And so it's been really good.
Obviously, you come back to the NBL after being overseas for a long time. You came to United first up, and that squad you had with Steve Holt, who we play with in Brisbane, Bubbles. You guys went on a unbelievable run, top of the ladder, and then hit a New Zealand team and got crumbled out. Obviously you've probably been on a part of teams that maybe should have won, maybe good teams, bad teams. How was that season? Because you guys were rolling lights out, lighting them up, killing the league, and then just kind of hit a hurdle. Yeah,
it was that was a fun year. We had a great group of guys. There was no egos on the team. It was one of the first teams I'd been on in my professional career where everyone just got along great. And I think that fueled our success there. And yeah, it was just a run and gun type of offense. With Dean Domopoulos as a coach, who was an ex-NBA guy, and it was very similar to their type of playing style. And the first time in a long time that I had played so freely like that, and it was an enjoyable way to play. And we put points on the board, and but unfortunately we got down to the finals, and New Zealand just kind of had our number. I think the week before the playoffs started, we sent not a full strength squad. A few of us stayed back with a few niggles here and there, and we sent a squad, and they absolutely demolished that team. It was the last game of the regular season, I think, and they needed to win that game to qualify to finish fourth, I think, if I remember it correctly. Anyway, they demolished our guys, and then we came back, and I think we only had a short while to prepare, and it was just a grind. They just outgrinded us, and just in the nitty gritty, we just really struggled. Weren't hitting the shots we were normally hitting, and it was just an ugly little battle there.
I feel like do you guys play them the last 2 games of the season?
It must have been the last 2. Yeah,
I feel like you guys played them 8 games in a row. It felt like at that time. Do you think not sending a full team and giving them confidence, I guess, to get that little roll on potentially was part of the reason why you guys lost?
Oh, I think it definitely plays a part. Looking back on it, that's something that I think we probably shouldn't have done. But you never know. Guys carrying niggles. It's a long season. Guys playing big minutes, and you're trying to balance that between, okay, we've got first place cemented. Do we rest some guys and get them healthy and get them ready for playoffs, or do we keep them engaged and traveling and on the court and locked in with the rest of the guys? And so I think that in hindsight, looking back on that, maybe we should have just sent the full squad and then maybe limited minutes or whatnot. But it's one of those ones there. It's easy to criticize. You make the decision to take someone that you play them for 5 minutes and they get injured, and you're guaranteed to finish first anyway. So it's one of those ones that you're kind of just hoping that you make the right decision in some of those cases.
And then obviously you signed with the Bullets. I know that was a massive reason why you wanted to sign up there. But why did you want to sign with the Bullets and leave Melbourne? Because you're from Melbourne, and
Yeah.
What
The
was
biggest
that
reason
decision?
was when I played Adelaide that you'd always switch on me, and it was really hard to back the Wombat down in the post. So I was like, I'm going up there, so I don't have to worry about the guards switching on me anymore. But no, for me. It was the opportunity to start something new. You know, I was kind of involved with the rebranding of the United situation when I got to Melbourne, and that was enjoyable to see the growth there. And I thought the prospect of living in Brisbane and putting together a squad under Dre was really exciting. It's always a challenge to be part of something new, as you know, with the Bullets and Southeast Melbourne, obviously, and the teams you've played with in the past. But that challenge and that ability to get in on the ground floor with an organisation and help build the culture, I think, is fun. And that's always something you look back on and hope that you left a little bit of a mark there, no matter what it is, something small that you can go back in 10, 15, 20 years and still feel like you had a fingerprint on that organisation. So that was a big part of it, and the ability to play with the guys like yourself that we're putting together was exciting.
Are you going to look back and be super proud of the fact that you were a key member of making or writing the team song that hopefully is still kicking on and hopefully will for the next 20 years?
100%. 100%. I'm very proud of that song. I love it. And I've confirmed that the guys are still singing it. So I was pretty happy. I remember confirming with you the next year if you guys were still singing it, and you said you had been. And I think Cam Glidden or Kadee, I can't remember, was saying that they're still singing it. So that's pretty cool. And I hope that's around for, that's one of the things I was mentioning. That's your little fingerprint. If you come back in 30 years and they're still singing the same song and having the same traditions in the locker room, that'd be pretty cool. You just got to make sure that you still know the words.
Obviously, you got the basketball side and the camaraderie and all that stuff. But, things I love about basketball is the banter and all the fun you have, on the buses, on the planes, after practice in the change room. And that's something that I feel big on. Some people might take it the wrong way and whatever, but being old school, you like to push buttons. And how much do you enjoy the whole banter side of professional sports, I guess?
Oh, I think it's the best part of it. Obviously, the competing side and the winning side, but that camaraderie that you build off the court, I think, in my belief, is part and parcel with winning on the court. And it's the best way to get to know people, I think. And the best way to do it is, I think, just be yourself, and guys who are just themselves, it naturally comes out, and you start to form those relationships with guys who are similar and things like that. So I think it's some of the stuff we got up to. Some of my funnest years were those years in Brizzy, and the banter we had amongst the group, and the team trips. I think the Blitz is a big one when teams start to really form that identity, and I think we did a really good job of that. And when you have guys who are like-minded on the team who love a joke and love getting together and messing around, and no matter what it is, building traditions amongst that group that are unique to that group, I think is really important. And they're the things that when things get tough and things get bad, you can always fall back on and kind of stick together through. And so they're probably my most memorable moments in every team I've been on. The moments off the court where we're just kind of bonding and cracking jokes and having a laugh about some things and give and stick to each other.
Let's go back to that Blitz. I think it was in Melbourne, maybe Traralgon or somewhere. And I remember in that older kind of apartheid, like the building, whatever it was, a hotel, and all the rooms were in like kind of a circle shape. And they were like, there's massive, I guess, living area separating all the rooms. So you could come out and literally couches and coffee machines, whatever is right there. And that's kind of where the whole Monopoly deal started and where my reign as champ of that kind of began. Like, talk to the competitive side of not being able to beat me and, all that kind of stuff.
I think the running total of that trip was about 25 to me, and I think you might have squeaked one in. You and Brucey might have got one in that week. Tommy Jervis fluked a few, I think, maybe. That was awesome. That was, for us, that was our building, but we had a few sick guys, I think, that trip, and it was like a flu running through. And that was probably one of the funnest blitzes I think I've ever been a part of. We were just shooting it and got stuck in a Monopoly deal. I think it went league-wide Monopoly deal that did that year. I think almost every single team was playing. And we definitely, if we had an inter-squad Monopoly deal championship, I'm pretty sure I would have won it.
What is that? what was I going to say? Oh, well, yeah. It's also that I remember that trip because most of the time when you're in hotel rooms or whatever, you don't have a common area to hang out in. And we did we literally people could finish practice or shoot around or preseason games and go and hide in their room, but none of our teammates were allowed to do that. A lot of new guys come together, so that kind of I feel like sped up the whole teammanship just purely for the fact that we had that massive common area to hang out in.
Yeah, I completely agree, and I think it was like we almost had, without saying it, like an open door policy. Where if a guy went into his room, he basically left his door open so we could all kind of keep the conversation going and call each other out. And everyone was always sticking their head out, waiting for the game to finish so they could jump on board. And I think that was huge. And the Blitz, there's a lot of downtime. It's freezing. It was freezing cold in Traralgon, so we wanted to kind of stay indoors. And made the most of it. And I think we kept that monopoly deal tradition. I think we kept a running tally for the year. It might have gone. We were doing it. I remember doing it in New Zealand the next year. Was it? Or maybe it was the same year. We had a preseason tour to New Zealand, and we sat inside the little pool room there and played until probably 2 or 3 in the morning.
We'll get to moving from Brisbane to Sydney. You obviously played for Australia a bunch of times. World champs, Com games. How good is it putting on the green and gold and being a part of the Aussie team? And is that one of your career highlights? Or I guess one of your most memorable highlights is being a representative of the Boomers. Yeah,
for sure. When I was coming out of college, I had the opportunity to go play at the World Champs in 2006 in Japan, and I was just beside myself when Gorge had pulled me in and told me I had made the team. I just couldn't believe it. It was one of those moments where I almost didn't know how to react. I didn't know to laugh or cry or smile. I kind of was just shocked, and being able to share that with my family, who knew that was obviously a goal of mine since being a young kid, was awesome. And to have that experience and just say, okay, now I can forever be a Boomer, was huge. And that's something that I'll always look back. I think it was the first jersey I ever got framed, and it sits up. Well, it doesn't now, but it's in Melbourne, and it's sat forefront right in my in one of my rooms. And that's something that I'll never forget. And then obviously I've had the opportunity to play a lot more games since then, but looking back on that and the experiences since, it's something that I hold. That's for me, it's almost my number one part of my basketball identity. And lucky enough, a few years ago to have the Com Games, gold medal, the Asia Cup situation, and loved it all. And every opportunity is a unique opportunity. And unfortunately missed out on the Olympics a couple of times, but again, just to be part of that squad and get so close is for me a point of pride. And you still feel like you're there, even though you didn't make that final squad. You feel like you're part of it, and you feel like you had something to do with that team and the build-up process. And that's something I hope for everybody to be able to get the opportunity to do, because it's really special.
Well, it's not always just about making the team, but the fact that you're in the top 15 or the top 20 players in the country is something that you can always hold your hat on. I know it's obviously disappointing not getting finally selected or whatever, but just to be in that mix of people and to be thought of in that group is pretty cool. Yeah,
for sure. To see the growth, you get to the point where you're so ingrained, bought into the whole thing that when you're watching them play, you feel sick watching them play. You can see the plays that they're running. You're so familiar with everything. It's this sense of nervousness watching them play. It's horrible. It's horrible sitting at home watching it. And, we've had some devastating results in the last few years, and it's gut-wrenching for everyone involved. And anyone who's ever been a Boomer knows what it's taken for that group to get where they are and for the country to get where it is. And, you can't ever forget that.
Also, we've both been on some NBL All Aussie teams that have gone to China. I've lost count how many times I've been in China. It's probably well over 15 times. Remember the China trip we went on? I don't know if you had some bad food or what. We're on the bus. And, you happened to, regurgitate a little bit up the back of the bus. And you remember calling out to Tommy. Tommy, help. Tommy Greer, right? Because Tommy was he's now a GM. Shout out to our South East Melbourne Phoenix GM Tommy Greer, but you remember being on the bus and yelling out to him like a little boy calling out to his dad or his mum, like, come and help.
Like he was going to be able to help. There's nothing he was going to do. It was basically coming out of my mouth right before the second right after I called for him. Yeah, it was one of those ones where I knew it was coming. Stuck on this bus. I wanted to say stop the bus and let me off, but all that came out was Tommy. And then and then I ended up. There's actually video of it. Dave Barlow got a front row seat video record of it, and it's just bok choy flying out of my mouth and just making its way, because I think the message ended up making its way down to the bus driver, and he slammed on the brakes, which didn't help the situation because it just sent a river of my bok choy down to the front of the bus. So it could have been handled better in my situation. I could have looked for a plastic bag, a shoe, anything. I could have tried to make a move, but kind of sat there and gave up.
Speaking of Dave Barlow, now we've been on plenty of trips with him overseas and Aussie teams and whatever. Have you ever seen a human being stretch more than Dave Barlow? I reckon he would get up in his sleep every half hour and stretch his quads or something. Like, I've never seen someone, I mean, he's super professional, but stretch as much as he does.
Yeah, I'm actually quite envious. I wish I could stretch as much as he does. I probably could, but it's just too uncomfortable. But he's that flexible. It's obviously paying off for him. But no, there is no human alive, I don't think, in any sport that stretches as much as Dave.
All right, so back to being in Brisbane. It's not always a choice to leave a team. And it was a question: why did you leave Brisbane and go to Sydney?
Yeah, that was a tough situation for me. I felt like I'd done pretty well in Brizzy, and although we had some struggles as a team and we didn't get the success that we wanted, I feel like we dealt with a lot of injuries and things like that, obviously. But it was a play. We loved being in Brizzy. We weren't necessarily prepared to leave, but it's just the business of it and the way that it goes, I guess. And Brisbane didn't want to offer a contract. They wanted to go in a different direction, which I understand completely. And then, so Sydney, as soon as that happened, I put out my feelers, and Sydney was the first team to pop up, and it was a really exciting time. That was a crazy month for me, because as soon as almost had the negotiations done, contract was written up, I was just waiting to sign, and we get a message. Jeff calls me and it's like, "Hey man, we're just going to put a hold on this. Can we just wait for the weekend, and then we'll deal with it next week? But don't worry, everything's cool." And I'm sitting there, and part of me, the pessimistic side was like, "Oh man, no, this is going to fall through. This is crazy. What's going on?" And lo and behold, that weekend is the big announcement of Bogues. And I'm sitting at home knowing that, I've got this contract basically in the bag, and then they sign Andrew Bogut, and I'm just like, I've hit the jackpot. Like, this is amazing. And so that was a roller coaster of like, oh man, I'm leaving. This sucks. Like, wasn't ready for this. Oh, great. Sydney's on board. Awesome. About to have a contract. Oh no, I think they're going to pull the contract. What's going on? Why are we delaying? And then, oh my God, Andrew Bogut signed. And that whole process was pretty crazy. And the excitement that generated in Sydney was huge. And yeah, so that, it's worked out really well. Obviously, we've had 2 really good years here. I'm watching the club go through another redevelopment. I guess almost everywhere I go, it seems like we're getting a new redevelopment. We've got a new ownership here, new coaching group came through this year. And to be a part of that and the big shift that's changed there, especially through the ownership group and what they've done, has been awesome.
You've obviously played with Bogues before. I feel like you're similar age growing up. How good was? Well, obviously, you're super excited to know that he was signing there when you're about to, but just to be able to play with him. And I've been with one Boomers program with him. We went overseas to Croatia and played against New Zealand. And just being around him for a small amount of time. People that don't know Bogues like probably would have an opinion, but when you're around him and he's giving and he's not a dickhead or anything like that. He's super cool to be around. Like, it must have been pretty cool to have, I guess, an old mate back on your team and someone that's one of the best basketballers we've ever produced.
Yeah, you're not wrong about that. He's definitely one of the best we've ever produced. And to be around him is awesome. I think me and Bogues are very similar in a lot of ways. And he's definitely a team first mentality type guy. And you don't get that often. I think that guys who are overseas for a long time and guys who play in the NBA can be affected by that lifestyle and be affected by, the ego that comes with that. And that's, I feel like where Australians are very unique is it doesn't seem like that really makes its way too often into, our culture as basketball players. And Bogues is sitting right at the forefront. He's as Aussie as it gets. And he hasn't really changed at all since I grew up with him. Obviously he's matured a lot. Me and Bogues used to get, butt heads a lot when we were growing up at the AIS and things like that. But since then, we've both obviously matured and we get along really well. But just to be around him and his influence over the club and over the team and how he impacts a game and how he sees the game, he gets a lot of credit for how well he passes and how well he defends. But he sees the game bigger picture as well. And he'd be a great asset for this country to continue to tap into from a basketball perspective, just because of his experiences and just how he sees the game. His IQ level is being up, and everyone knows that about him. But yeah, off the court, he's just one of the dudes. He's not sitting separately from anyone. He's there with us. He's happy to sign autographs. People are bugging him all the time in the lounges and on the airplanes, and he's just one of those guys. It's hard. He can't not stand out. So I was really impressed with how he handled all that attention that came with it. And it was great that he was able to do that for the league. And I hope other NBA guys can do it in the future, because it's huge for the league and it's huge for basketball here.
You've been with him now for a little while. Have you, part of the trip that I loved when we went to Croatia and did like the whole pre-Aussie tour over there was the stories he'd tell about, the championships and all the stuff with the Warriors. Have you sat down? I'm sure he's shared a bunch of them with you guys, but dipped into some of those stories from his NBA days?
Yeah, he has. Yeah, he's got a plethora, and we're constantly hitting him up. Or it's easy. You'll be sitting there having a discussion about the NBA as it is, or an import that might be coming in, or a name that's been floated. Like the whole, what was the whole deal last season? Sean Livingston's situation was meant to be going to Perth. Like he knows almost immediately, because he still talks to all these guys. And so all of that stuff, all the rumors you hear floating around, because he knows so many guys, you're able just to be like, "Oh, hey, Bogues, is this true?" And he'll be like, "Nah, that's not true. That's not happening." Stuff like that. So to be able to hear some of the stories he's got about some of the guys, some of the funnier ones are always good. The rookie initiation stuff that they do over there, it's really fun. But he was more than happy to share some of the stuff and some of his experiences, the good stuff, the bad stuff, and all the stuff that goes along with it, the business side of it all and all that. So it's really intriguing stuff. He got stories for days.
And obviously he's pretty big on Twitter. But you're low-key a Twitter guy as well. You don't mind a couple of little cheeky stabs here and there just to like stir the pot a little bit, but have fun, but also both well-educated people that know what they're talking about as well. So that must be something you two can have a bit of a chat about.
Yeah, we definitely. He gets on me a lot now because I don't get on it as often as I used to. I used to get on all the time, kind of getting a rise out of people and whatnot. But I kind of just realised that one day this basketball life's going to be over, and I'm going to have to get a real job and whatnot, and so I better tone it down. So he obviously he's great on there, and I love watching him bait people. And it's funny, social media, how quickly people can get enraged and just fly off the handles. And I think half the people, if not 3/4 of the people on Twitter, are out there just to get a rise out of people. And so it's funny to see.
The whole question thing that I put out, they've got a bunch of questions. Have you ever had a coach with no arms?
I have. Well, he had arms, but he had a birth defect when he was a child, and he actually didn't have any arms, and he was actually a really good coach, and really proficient at. It sounds crazy, but he was as you'd expect. He was a spot on passer, but he'd kick you the ball. Like we'd be doing post ups, and you do a post move, get your rebound, flick it back out, and he'd have it right back in your hands in a matter of seconds, right on the money. So he was a fascinating guy to talk to, really good coach, and just goes to show the things that people can overcome and the situations that you're given. Just because he had that disability doesn't mean he can't coach basketball. And he was fascinating. That was my rookie year actually, so it was a bit of a shock. I guess you get off the plane and you realise, you're a bit confused at the start, and you realise you start talking to him for a little while, and you're like, oh God, this guy knows what he's talking about. And so that's true.
Craziest teammate?
Great one. I've had some crazy teammates. Shared one with you. But probably my craziest teammate was two guys. One guy, Will McDonald. He played with him in Spain. He was crazy. Another guy, Paul McPherson, who was an ex-NBA player. I played with him in Italy as well. He was phenomenal athlete, phenomenal player. He was in the league. I think he went to DePaul, was in the league with the Phoenix Suns. Super athlete. There's a video of him online playing for the team I played for, Livorno, stealing the ball at half court, and there's a 7-footer waiting for him in the key, and he comes down to about the free throw line, 3-point line around there, throws it off the backboard over this 7-footer, and just jumps from just inside the free throw line and just two hands on this guy. And it's one of the nastiest dunks I've ever seen. But he was a bit of a head case, and he wasn't one of those guys you wanted to mess around with in training. He didn't like getting fouled. He didn't like getting touched, any of that. But him, in combination of one of the other imports there, Brandon Hunter, it was a bit of a nightmare.
Have you ever had a teammate just sit out of a drill?
Yes, for sure. I've had a few. And those two guys I just mentioned were definitely, I had one guy, the Brandon Hunter guy, would sit down under the basket, like, cross-leg, if he didn't get and just sit there, and while we run down the other end playing, because he didn't get a foul call, stuff like that. And then, I've had, players walk out on teams, guys just leave practices and things like that, not come back and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, it's been wild.
You like to read? What's your favourite book?
Oh, favourite book? That's tough. I think my favourite book is always the one I'm currently reading, and I just finished one. I'm actually listening to one now, Super Forecasters. Will Weaver's put me on a few. That's an interesting one. But the one I just finished, I found really interesting, and my brain is going to shut down and not let me remember what it was. That's how good it was. It's actually what I was talking about before about generalization and specialization. It's called let me find it. Range by David Epstein, and it talks about this early specialization and the more general type approach to things, and they use Roger Federer and Tiger Woods as examples, and I really enjoyed listening to that. So I've just finished that, and now I'm starting this super forecasting one, which is starting off a bit slow but interesting all the same.
Are you an advocate for ice baths? And
I'm not.
And if not, why?
Just the reading up on it. Just there's good evidence to say it doesn't do anything. If anything, depending on what you're training for, that it can be detrimental to recovery and to strength gains and things like that. And it also sucks. So I'm just glad that I found corroborating evidence to support my my lack of enthusiasm about ice baths.
What is it with shooting Aussies with grey hair like yourself and Andrew Gaze? They just don't miss often. Is it, for all the kids out there that, maybe not very athletic, can't jump very high, not very quick, but can just shoot the absolute shit out of it? Is it something to do with the grey hair, and how do you like being called the Grey Mamba?
The Grey Mamba. I think that's a Kyle Adnam nickname. I think he gave that to me. I love it. It's good. Grey hair. Yeah, I don't know. It's not something I would willingly wish upon people. I've been going grey since I think college, so it's and it didn't come in good. Some people get that nice little grey streak. It comes in peppered in. Mine just came in just full force, just like horrible, and nothing I could do about it. And I was never going to dye it. My sisters would always prompt me with gifts, like the Just for Men, the ones where you could just put it in. That would always be a gift almost every year. And they would tempt me with it, but I just knew I'd be too lazy to upkeep it. And once I'd done it, I knew it was something I'd have to keep doing, or I'd just cop too much flack. So that's probably the biggest reason. My mates would have given me too much stick about it. So I just had to embrace it and pretend like I don't care. And when you do Zoom stuff like this, just wear a hat and hope that no one notices.
Well, on a serious note, you I don't know if you're the first in the NBL history, but I think you might be, and you've done it twice, to join the 50-40-90 club now. First of all, you've obviously always been a shooter, but is this something that you just spent a lot of hours on, or you just naturally were gifted? That's my first question. And then what's the mindset when you're actually in games and say it's 3/4 of the way through the season, you're like, man, if I miss 3 free throws or if I miss 2 threes right here, I'm gonna mess up my whole percentage. Like, does that come in at all, or is it just that's just your game and you just play it as it is? And
yeah, it's a good question. It's actually something that I get flack on. Like, people think that I'm worrying about making or missing shots to achieve that.
mm-hmm.
And it's a funny criticism to make, but I think that it's just a natural criticism of people who do that. They think, well, he's shooting such good clips, he must be pulling back and not attempting shots, as opposed to it's just the way that I play. Like, if I think it's a low percentage shot, and it's something that I've been working on, like this year I tried, and like a few years, where it's on high volume, 3-point shooting, like inside and out, high volume stuff. I always just try and I've always worked hard at trying to get to the shot that I know that I can make, as opposed to settling for a shot that I can't make. So, early on in my career, even in the NBL, I had a big inside presence, and I didn't like settling. Teams would always try and force me to my left hand in the block, and I never liked settling. I always thought I can still get to my right. I can still get to my right, because I know that it's a high percentage shot for me. And so it was just one of those things, is I just work to get to a shot that I'm comfortable making. And I've always been like that. I've never wanted to just launch a shot that I think has almost no chance of going in, because I don't enjoy that. I don't enjoy missing a shot that I know that I'm probably not going to make. And I know that my teammates are probably thinking, well, why are you just launching shots? So that's part of it, for sure. And I think it's something that I think I was first challenged in college by my assistant coach to be 50-40-80. And that's what he wanted for me to do. And he said, that's efficient. That's good. And it sounded good to me. It's like, if I make shots, that's better than missing shots, surely. And fortunately enough, I was still high volume, and fortunately enough, I was still able to achieve that. And I'd never even considered the 50-40-90 situation until it just happened. But yeah, it's not something that I'm thinking about, and I never did. It was just fortunate enough that, I've always been 50-40 from the field. 90% from the free throw line was just a bonus that year. And I've done it a couple of years since. But yeah, 50 and 40 isn't, I don't think, for a guy in my position, that difficult to achieve. I'm either shooting high percentage shots from inside the paint, or I'm shooting open threes that are created for me most of the time. They're not threes where I'm coming off pick and rolls and handling the ball, which are obviously more difficult shots to take. So yeah, it's cool to be a part of. I'm glad that I was the first guy to do it, and that I've done it twice, just only for the sake that it's something that looks cool in the record books, because I'm definitely not going to get the most dunks in the season or the #1 highlight or anything like that. So yeah, it's just, that's what it is, kind of thing. And I think to get there, it was the big mindset for me was just working on things to get to the shot that I know that I could make. So, if I ever move into coaching or anything like that, I've got my own ideas and thoughts about how those things work and how to do those things. And, I've just been, ever since I was given the green light to shoot threes, it's just been a part that I thought, well, I might as well be as good as I can at it. And that's something I focus on now. And other parts of my game are obviously diminishing as I get older, but that 3-pointer, I just want to keep at as high a clip as I possibly can.
We've got a couple left for you before we wrap up. You just talked about coaching once you're done. Is that something you're looking to do once you finish playing in a few years, a couple of years, whenever that is? Or have you got something else lined up for post basketball?
Yeah, no, I want to stay in basketball for sure. I think coaching is definitely something I'm interested in, but just staying within basketball itself. So no matter how that looks, I feel like, I've done my 25 years of being playing in some way, shape or form. That's my apprenticeship. It's a pretty long apprenticeship. So I feel like I've formed a pretty good knowledge base in some areas there, and a unique way to look at some things, hopefully, just because of my experience. I think everyone's experiences are a little bit different, and I hope that those experiences bring something to the table, and, to change now into a whole new area of life that I'm unfamiliar with. although would be a great challenge, I think that my best attributes are suited towards sticking with this area, and it's something that I would enjoy.
You talked about your absolutely no athleticism at all. Talk to me about your dunk against Carmelo Anthony, when you're playing for Team Australia versus.
No, it wasn't a dunk. He tried to dunk.
No, when you blocked him, sorry.
Yeah. He, I don't know who turned it over. It could have well been me, but it was just a hustle back, and I think Newell's was there too, and it was just I think I might get dunked on here, but I'm just going to jump early. And I just ran, I jumped early, and he kind of jumped. He might have tried to slow step it or something like that, and he kind of just hung in the air a little bit, and I just got a fingernail on it. But it's all I need, and there's a photo, and it's all the evidence I need, and I can invent whatever story I want about it in 10, 15 years.
It looks like a foul. The photo looks like a clear foul. If anyone Googles that picture, I'll put it up on my post later. It looks like a massive foul.
It might be very hard to find, but don't worry, I've got plenty of copies, so I can send you one.
I've got it. Last question. Now, we have this conversation and this debate a lot, and I'm a little bit disappointed being an older guy, old school. Obviously, the Last Dance is now out on Netflix. MJ, and clearly, MJ is a GOAT, no question. But you seem to be on LeBron's tip so bad that, like, we always have these conversations about all this stuff, and I'm like, mate, why do you think LeBron is the GOAT and Michael Jordan is not?
It's interesting because I am watching The Last Dance, and I've decided that Michael Jordan is my favorite player of all time. I love everything, how he talks, how he goes about it all. But my belief is in every area, in every discipline in the world, more often than not, vast majority, more often than not, people keep improving and getting better. And that's just that you look at any sport, you name it, I bet you that the people who are competing in it today are better. So whether it be the 100-meter sprint or pole vault or whatever it is, there's people living today are better at it than the people who played in their prime 20 or 30 years ago. So that's a big part of it for me. And also the fact that LeBron is a bulldozer, just a genetic specimen that hasn't existed in the sport that can do what he can do. And his impact on the game in all these different ways, and the competition that he's going against, again, back to the same theory, is that the cream of the crop keeps on rising. And so everyone keeps getting better. So for the last 20 years, everyone across the board has continued to improve steadily. People have gotten bigger. People have gotten faster. People have gotten more skilled. There weren't Dirk Nowitzki's. There weren't Greek freaks. There weren't guys like that who could do what they do back then. And I just think LeBron is on the top of that cream, and it's against a higher talent pool, a larger talent pool. It's more difficult to get into the NBA, I would assume. I don't know. It's an unwinnable argument, but that's the basis of mine.
Sounds like a shit argument. I reckon Jordan would still get buckets to this day.
Yeah, I'm not saying Jordan would get buckets, but I think LeBron is a better basketball player. He's not a greater basketball player per se, but he's better at the game of basketball, I think.
This is why we don't often ask big men for their opinions in timeouts. Yeah.
Well, at least I'm not saying Bill Russell, because there'll be people out there arguing Bill Russell, and I'm sorry, I can't agree with that.
No, look, it's always a good chat, mate. I quite enjoy our little catch-ups, and always got a lot of good stuff. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day, mate. And, hopefully we can get back to some normal life, and the NBL gets back to where it needs to be and how it was, and we can all kind of get back to normality. But, thanks for joining me, mate. I really appreciate it. And hopefully, you might be able to beat Riley at Monopoly Deal. Teach you how to game so you can get a win.
There's got to be an app. I'm going to find an app and I'm going to send it to you and smoke you.
Done deal. Kicks. Thanks, mate. Appreciate it.
Thanks for having me, man.
See you, brother.
See you, right.